Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to church. Hey, come on, we're in church. Man, this is like totally Good Morning Northwest. This is for you too, so this is off the grid. It has nothing to do with my message or anything I'm going to say this morning, but we have been getting incredible testimonies back from our healing service we had a couple weeks ago. Like just amazing stuff, like ears opening, epilepsy, autism, just necks, backs, knees, joints, finger, like lots of great. So can you do me a favor? If Northwest, this is you as well, if God has done a miracle in your life, can you just let us know? I think it's really important that we don't just like ask for things, but we celebrate when great things happen. So I didn't mean to get all heavy with you right off the top, but I didn't know where else I was going to fit that in. So if God's done a miracle in your life, or you know He's in the process of working a miracle, can you just fire an email, just connect at experiencechurch.ca, and it doesn't have to be something that we're going to share to the whole world if you don't want us to. But I would at me as just the pastor, I'd be so encouraged just to know what God is doing, because He still does miracles, and they're happening right here. Is that all right? Okay, that was too serious for the beginning. Let's take it from the top. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to church. Hey, Northwest, good to see you. See, it's like we haven't done it yet. Man, there's a party in the Northwest today. They're having baptisms this morning. They're having a barbecue. Little Southeast envy happening down here, guys, but that's okay. We hope you have fun. And we had a conference this week. It was the ARC Canada Conference. ARC is the movement we're a part of. It's a church planting movement. It's kind of our organization. I like to think about it as it's kind of our tribe. You know, this is our family, but that's our tribe, kind of our extended fam. And can I just say that we had 40 people from Experience Church came, 40 of our dream team members. All of our staff were there serving the over 400 pastors and leaders and volunteers that attended the conference. And our staff crushed it. Like just hit it out of the park. The EC people that were in the building set the vibe. I came in to preach on the Wednesday night session, and I walked in. They have like this, you know, you're with the general population for the whole thing until it's time to preach, and then they bring you in a special door. And I came in the special door. There's like 40 of our crew up at the front having like this, you know, it was like a youth conference style mosh pit at this pastor's conference, just worshiping and sweaty, but it was so encouraging. They set the tone the entire week. And so just be encouraged not only by the great leadership that you have here at EC, but by the bigger picture that we're a part of. And there are great things happening in our country. If you got your Bible, would you pull it out? We're going to go to 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy chapter 6. If you don't have a Bible, that's okay. We've got Bibles in the lobby. We can hook you up with a free one after service. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6. It says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain." Godliness with contentment is great gain. It's great gain. It's great gain. We are in the second week of our High Roller series. Last week, the sort of premise that we began with was just this thought that if you put your hope and your satisfaction and your security and your joy and your trust in things, that you're living a high-risk life. In fact, in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17, it says that anyone who puts their hope in stuff should be careful because stuff is unreliable. And so we sort of established this fact, but then we also looked at the thought that we want to be high rollers. We want to get involved when the stakes are high. And so in God's economy and understanding our finances from God's perspective and God's way means that we understand that in God's economy it is high stakes. In fact, in God's economy, he doesn't broker in earthly dollars. It's all about eternal destinations. So like souls are the currency of heaven. I mean, you're playing for keeps when you're playing in God's economy. Not only is God's economy high stakes, but it's high cost. Jesus wants everything from us. But here's the best part, is it's high stakes and it's high cost, but it's also high reward. See, when God gave Jesus, he gave his best, and God took all the risk, not knowing exactly how each of us would respond to that investment. But so the beautiful thing is that since he gave Jesus and took all the risk, when we give everything, there's no risk, only reward. Only reward. So in God's economy, it's high stakes, it's high cost, but it's high reward. It's guaranteed reward. Yes, we are in a series about possessions and wealth and money. No, we are not going to take a special offering because we don't believe that guilt is a great motivator. It's great for making you feel bad about yourself, but it's not a good motivator. So just rest assured, there's no special offering coming, but we do think, and the Bible tells us that where your treasure is, your heart will be also. And so if our hearts are set towards God, we also need to make sure that our treasure is going in that same direction, or you're going to have divided loyalties in your life. And so the whole purpose of this series is how do we get invested? How do we go all in when the stakes are at their highest? And I think this is going to be very helpful to all of us. Can we pray together? Is that all right? God, thank you for your presence here. God, thank you that we can be among friends and that you've got a great plan for each and every one of us. We just ask that you'd help us to understand a little bit more about Jesus and how we can be all in just like he was. We ask these things in his name. Amen. Amen. That verse we read off the start says that godliness with contentment is great gain. Great gain. Great gain. Like you're adding to yourself. There are great gains and there are not so great gains. In fact, I looked up gains. I looked up the hashtag gains yesterday, and I looked up the hashtag great gains. One, great gains is quite intimidating. It's all people that have more muscles in their back than I have in my entire body. Great gains is just like back pics with like muscles on top of muscles, and then you've got like little subdivisions, and it's just like, it's incredible. I didn't know that I've got like just one piece of skin on my back. It's just my back. These people, it's like subdivided into colonies, And so there's great gains. I tend to gravitate more towards the not so great gains. There are certain things about my diet. In fact, several of us in the office, some of the guys are like, man, we're going to do a 10-pound challenge before we go to the art conference. So about a month ago, we're like, yeah, we're in it, guys. We're going to do a 10-pound challenge. And so for a couple of days, we joked because it didn't seem like there was a lot of change in the eating patterns of any of the people in the office. And so it's like, hey, man, got to get those gains, got to get those gains. Turns out we all got the gains. Nobody lost any weight. We just gained a bunch of weight. And you know what? Those just more to love, and that's all right. And so there's not so great gains, but there are great gains. And the Bible says that godliness with contentment is great gains. My hope for us spiritually is that we're all going to be like those guys when you hashtag great gains and you just see muscles on top of muscles coming out of their back. That spiritually, there's no physical pressure, but spiritually, I think if we can understand godliness and contentment together, that will build up spiritual muscle. And in fact, we'll be able to carry a heavier load. We'll have greater endurance. We'll be better at accomplishing the tasks that God's put before us if we understand godliness with contentment. So last week, we looked at the Israelites. The Israelites had been slaves in Egypt, and things were crazy. They had no passion. They had no hope. They had no future. They had no direction. And Egypt represented for us a place of poverty. It was the land of not enough. And so poverty, we need to understand, is not a number. It's not a dollar value. It's not a figure that you can really put your finger on. Poverty is a mindset, just like slavery for the Israelites was a mindset. And the reality is it doesn't matter what you make, what your income is, what your tax return looked like this year. If you live in a constant state of never having enough, then you're living in poverty. And so the Israelites lived in Egypt in this constant state of never having enough. Now, God didn't want the Israelites to stay slaves to the Egyptians, just like he doesn't want us to stay slaves to a poverty mentality of always reaching for more and never quite having enough. And so he came and he gave them a vision for their lives. And we established last week that if you want to move from the land of not enough, if you want to grow in your finances and understand God's economy, then we have to have a vision for what God wants us to do. We have to have a big picture vision for our lives. And God's simplistic vision for you and for me is that he wants to bless us so that we can build his kingdom. Now, that's not to say everybody in the room has to have the exact same vision. Your vision or your goal might be to buy a house. It might be to get out of debt. It might be to have some investments. It might be, I don't know what it is, college fund for your kids. But you have to make sure that your personal vision fits through the filter of God's big picture vision. Right? So if at the end of the day, you're not living your life to somehow be on the receiving ends of God's blessings, but then put that into action and build his kingdom, then you need to reassess the vision that you're pursuing with your life. And so God came to the Egyptians and said, listen, guys, I never wanted you to stay here in slavery. I actually want to take you from the land of not enough to the land of more than enough. And he gives us promises. There's better for you than living here chasing, ultimately something that's never going to bring you satisfaction. You'll never get ahead here in the land of not enough. I want to bring you to the land of more than enough. And so you've got to have vision. If you're not telling your money where to go, you're going to wonder where it went. You've got to have vision for your life and for your finances. And so things are good. God says, I've got vision for you. The Israelites are like, right on, man. I love the vision. It sounds way better than slavery. And so God starts to lead them out of slavery. And he says, I need this one thing from you. I need you to give me your best cows, like the firstborn. I need to have the very best of your livestock. And so they thought about it for a minute, but then they went for it. They gave God the very best of their livestock. We talked about priority giving. It's giving God the first and the best as a sign that you trust him to take care of your needs. So they show that they trust him. Everything's going well. He leads them out of Egypt into safety. And they don't get, they are days removed from slavery. They're in the safety of the desert. And all of a sudden, things get crazy because they don't have their cows. They gave God their best cows, and now they're 3 days removed from slavery, and they're hungry, which makes sense. They can't have burgers anymore. That's all gone. That ship has sailed. They need some food. It's been a few days. And so they start complaining to God, saying, God, we gave you our cows, and now we're super hungry. Help us. And God says, okay, I can get behind that. Now, what's interesting is let's check Exodus chapter 16, verse 4 first. So they're complaining. They're not sure what to do. They're hungry. They're safe, but they're hungry. Exodus chapter 16, verse 4 says, the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. This way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. So, what are those conversations like in heaven? God, we're super hungry. God's hanging out with Gabriel and Michael. Hear that? They're hungry. What should we do? Conference room, we're going to brainstorm. So then he gets together with the angels. They're having a little brainstorming session. Gabriel's like, God, what if you made it rain bread? Oh, hadn't thought of that, Gabe, but I like it. That's great. I wonder how they're going to react. Michael does the weather update, so he's like, well, we have some sunshine in the late afternoon, but there's a strong east wind coming in. It's going to be cloudy with the chance of manna overnight. What do those conversations look like? I just imagine them having so much fun with the Israelites, so they're complaining. And so, but listen, understand that this is actually how God works. The Israelites gave him their first. They had no idea where the next meal was going to come from. Nothing made sense. They had released everything out of their hands. But then God just cooked something up that's never happened before. Hey, we're going to make it rain pastries. This is fantastic. That's how, when we give to him first, he gets supernaturally involved in our lives. And supernatural means the way he's going to take care of you is probably not something you can predict, not something you can expect, not even something you can plan for. They weren't planning for bread to fall from the sky. In fact, when they first brought the complaint to God, Moses was like, God, how many cows is this going to take to feed everybody? Where are we going to get that type of livestock? And God was like, Moses, relax. It's going to rain bread. You know, like he wants to do something supernatural in your life. So just for a minute, let's just be thankful that God doesn't play by our rules, that he can provide for you outside of the way that you provide for yourself. He can provide for you outside of the way that makes sense to you, that he can jump in. And when he gets supernaturally involved in your life, when you trust him with the first and you get his miracle working power involved in your life and working for you, he can make anything out of anywhere and do anything at any time to make sure that you are taken care of. So I just want to encourage you as we move in this direction of trusting God at a deeper level with our finances, please don't just trust him for finances. Right? It's not like, hey, I'm going to give God $10 and he's going to give me $100. God's supernatural activity can go way beyond. Way beyond. God doesn't even deal with dollars and cents in heaven. I would rather have heaven's blessing than the world's blessing. I'd rather have miracles and healing and my friends and family getting saved any day than I'd rather have more money. So we just need to get it outside of our paradigm that somehow God's only going to bless us financially. Realize that when he gets supernaturally involved, he can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. We can confidently go all in and know that he provides all of our needs according to his riches, not your bank account balance, not your job, not a possible promotion, his riches. And he's not rich because he has money. He's rich because he has the world. All right? There's a big difference. I'd rather have the entire planet than the money that makes the world go round, right? Like it actually doesn't, God does. Okay? So this all happens. And it like starts raining bread overnight, and the Israelites wake up the next morning. And in verse 17, it says, the Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much and some little. And when they measured it by the omer, he who gathered much did not have too much, and he who gathered little did not have too little. Each one gathered as much as he needed. Then Moses said to them, no one is to keep any of it until morning. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning. But it was full of maggots and began to smell. That's disgusting, so Moses was angry with them. Now, God follows through, okay? So it rains bread, but he gives two specific instructions to the Israelites. The first one is I want you to pick it up, and the second one is I only want you to pick up enough for one day. Now, let's think about these instructions for just a minute. God brings the miracle, but then he says you've got to work to get it. Like gather is a working word. There's process, and that's participation on behalf of the Israelites. See, God never just releases miracles without our moving. There's always movement that works in conjunction with the miracle. There's always some participation because this whole deal is a partnership with God. It's not just, we don't just sit back and wait for the room service. It's a partnership. So he says, I'm going to give you the miracle, but I need you to go out and pick it up, which means that God may have already released the miracle you're looking for. You just haven't done any work to grab hold of it. That means, and I want to encourage somebody, maybe you've been unemployed and you're just waiting for God you're waiting for a job to pop up in your email. You're waiting for a phone call from your old boss. Maybe, just maybe, you need to get out there and slam some resumes and try and find a job. Maybe God's already provided the spouse that you're believing for, but you just haven't done any work to grab hold of the miracle. So maybe you need to join an EC group. Maybe she's going to be in Next Steps after service. Maybe you just need to brush your teeth and have a shower, and you'll find the miracle. But no, it takes a little bit of work. It's a partnership. You got to work together. So God says, no, I want you to go out. I need you to work. I want you to get up every day. I want you to use the gifts and the mind and the talent and the skills that I gave you. Imagine the Israelites, though. I mean, they ate manna for 40 years. Imagine, but they complained. They complained a lot sooner than 40 years. They get a couple days in, and they're starting to get upset because they've got bread. Imagine what the conversation's like. God, I've been picking up bread for a week. God, I'm not really using my gifts. God, I'm a really good singer. But I've just been picking up bread for a week. That's not my gift. God, that's not what I'm really skilled at. Oh, really? Like walking to get the bread isn't a gift? Really? The breath that I put in your life, that's not using a gift? Really, the hands that you're going to use to pick up what I provide, that's not really a gift. Listen, we miss out because we think there are certain gifts we have to use. Make no mistake, there is nothing worse than someone's, there's no place for my gift at that church. I'm a really great singer, and they don't want me to lead worship. So, because I can't use my gift, I'm just going to use none of them. What? Listen, nobody can use all their gifts at the same time. I'm really good at making chocolate chip cookies, but I can't make chocolate chip cookies and preach at the same time. No, just use some of them. We just forget how gifted we are. We forget sometimes that, like, your breath is a gift. You can use your gift to grab hold of the miracle. It doesn't have to be singing, doesn't have to be leading, doesn't have to be. Now, listen, I'm not against those gifts. Those are great gifts. In fact, part of our Next Steps process in week 3, next week, is helping you discover those unique gifts. But there are also some common gifts, and the church does well when we just work with what we have in common and do everything we can in our power to build this kingdom. So sometimes you just need to get beyond, the one gift and realize you might have a dozen that can help the church move forward, and so if you've made the decision to say, well, my gift isn't really respected or being used there, so I'm just going to sit on the sidelines and use none of my gifts. Don't complain when you don't get your miracle. Don't complain when the miracle doesn't get released, because you got to be willing to use your gifts. Not just your favorite one, all of them. And God says, I just want you to get enough for one day. We're just going to take this one day at a time. I don't want you to get 2 days. I don't want you to get a week's worth. I don't want you to put it in the freezer. It's just one day. One day. I want you to trust me every single day. That's part of the test. I want you to get enough for one day so that I know you're going to have to trust me tomorrow, that your survival is going to depend on trusting me tomorrow. So just one day. And so what's happened here is, they tried to take it and store it up, and the maggots showed up, and that was all bad. What's happening here is God, in giving them enough for just one day, we see something unique about the wilderness. It's different from slavery, and it's different from Canaan. See, Egypt was the land of not enough. Canaan was the land of more than enough. But now in the wilderness, you see the place of just enough. That if you're going to go from not enough to more than enough, it always requires traveling through a season of just enough. That you've got to be okay with just enough. That you've got to be okay with just getting by. Listen, you will never get to the dream or purpose God has put in your life unless you're willing to walk through a wilderness season of just enough. And in some ways, this is harder than Egypt. It's more difficult because they're not getting free handouts anymore. They're not surviving by donation. They've got to actually work for themselves. They don't actually know what the meal's going to be tomorrow. And so you've got to be willing to go through this season. Here's the thing about the wilderness is that you don't need to thrive in the wilderness. You just need to survive in the wilderness. It's like you're going to thrive when you get to the land of more than enough. But if God doesn't know that you can survive on Him and Him alone, see, that's the test. God's testing the Israelites. If you can survive on what I give you and only what I give you, then I'll be able to bring you into the land of more than enough for you to have an abundance. But if you can't survive on just enough, and if I can't be just enough for you, then I can't give you any more. He says, no, I need you to survive on just enough. So financially, if you're going to go from poverty and scraping and never feeling like you have enough, you might have to lower your standards a little bit and learn how to survive on just enough before you can have more. Listen, if you're going to break the power of debt over your life, you're going to need to scale back what you spend and live on just enough, not everything you want. You're going to have to live on just enough so you can start paying some things off, so ultimately someday you can get to the place of more than enough. See, it might mean cutting back on some things. It might mean that you cut cable. It might mean that you have a staycation instead of a vacation. It might mean that you don't get your hair did quite as often. It might mean that your daily Starbucks turns into like a monthly treat. But I don't know what it looks like for you. And I'm not here to tell you what to do. I just want to introduce the concept that if you're actually going to get ahead, you might have to start living on a little bit less. You might have to endure just enough. Now, make no mistake, wilderness is hard work. Just enough is uncomfortable. It's not easy, but God never promised your comfort. Now, he's promised a calling, and if you think comfort and calling are interchangeable, then you're mistaken, because he promised your calling. He'll get you there, but he's not going to get you there comfortably. He's not going to get you there comfortably, so you've got to be willing to endure this season. Now, Numbers chapter 11, we start to see some of the frustration of the Israelites. Numbers chapter 11, verse 4. Says, the riffraff among the people had a craving. Now, I'm going to stop right there just for a minute. Riffraff, great word. We don't use that enough. Among the people had a craving. Can you just, I'm just thinking about this a little differently than I have up to this point, but can you be careful what you crave? Because I have a feeling that your cravings are the enemy of your calling. I have a feeling that if you just live to satisfy every craving you've got, then you're never actually going to reach the calling that's been put on your life. That you can't live for your cravings. Think about it. They say, Jay, Fitness Jay here in the Southeast campus, tells me that about 80% of healthy gains is what you eat. About 20% is how you exercise. So 80% is what you eat and 20% is what you exercise. Think about this. That you can be exercising your gift, but if you're still pursuing every craving, your gift isn't going to be effective. So you can have the gift and use the gift, but if you haven't learned to say no to the cravings of the world, then your gift isn't going to produce the fruit that God created it to produce. And you're going to get frustrated because like, well, God, I'm working so hard for you, but on the other side, you're looking at pornography and you're gossiping and you're lusting and you're going after possessions. And so on one hand, you're trying to use the gift, but on the other hand, you're not getting any further ahead because you're weighing yourself down with cravings. They got in trouble because of their cravings. It says as soon as they had the people of Israel whining, and soon they had the people of Israel whining. Why can't we have meat? We ate fish in Egypt and we got it for free. To say nothing of the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. I mean, there's nobody making out in this group, like onions, garlic, come on. What about the toothbrush? Okay. But nothing tastes good out here. All we get is manna, manna, manna. They're upset. They're complaining. They're grumbling. They're frustrated. Listen, and this is, now, I'll just to the religious folk for a minute, I find that the unhappy ones are the ones who aren't moving towards their calling. They're the ones who are getting held back by their craving. And so what happens here is they become, because they're pursuing their cravings, they get discontent, they get unhappy, unsatisfied, and unfulfilled. Man, where's the fish? We got all the fish we could eat in Egypt. We got all the cucumbers. God's like, you were slaves. Did you forget that you were slaves? Yeah, but we had leeks, God. We were slaves with leeks. Now we're free people with bread. This is the worst. They're getting so frustrated. And this is the danger of the season and place of just enough. Is that when you're in the place of just enough, people often lose confidence and they lose faith, and they lose vision. They're complaining here about what was a miracle at one point. Let's not forget that how quickly things have turned. How quickly it was like, oh my goodness, God is raining provision down from heaven. And now it's like, God, really? Bread again? Complaining about the miracle. And see, what was supposed to be an 11-day trip from Egypt, the place of not enough, to Canaan, the land of more than enough, what should have taken 11 days, it's an 11-day hike if we were to go do it today, took them 40 years. Of going around and around and around, because discontentment has a cost. Because discontentment will rob you from your calling. From discontentment will kill your destiny. Because if you get discontent, it's going to keep you on this vicious cycle of never being able to get ahead. And there are some people in the room this morning, and God has been He's been giving you a miracle. He's been giving you miracles. But you're still so stuck with the things you crave that you haven't moved from not enough to more than enough because you're just trapped in this discontent. You're stuck in the wilderness because of discontentment. It's a dangerous thing. Discontentment is keeping people from their destiny. They failed to realize that if they had just been thankful and lived off bread for 11 days, they would have walked into the promised land and been able to build cities and had farms and had cows and they could have had everything they ever wanted was right there, but they were discontent and stuck. Now, financially speaking, we have a contentment issue in our culture. Even in Canadian culture, last year, the average household spent 4.9, almost 5% more than they brought in. And that's during like an economic downswing, even in our province. Think about that. That might not seem that significant to you, but if you're continually spending 5% more than you're bringing in, then that means you go 4 years and you're 20% of what you brought in the hole. You go 8 years, now you're double that. 40%. Come on, I knew that, obviously. My dad's here. He's good with numbers. He's so disappointed in me right now. And you just get further and further and further in debt. See, discontentment will keep you in the wilderness just enough. If you stay there, if you stay in that place just enough, you'll never get to the promise. So I got some signs of discontentment that I think might be helpful. Is that okay? How do you know if you're discontent? How do I know? Trust me, this is not me giving you the signs. This is me beating myself up all week over the signs and just wanting to share a little bit of the agony with you, okay? Here are the signs of discontentment. Discontentment. Quick to compare with others rather than celebrate their progress. Quick to compare. Comparison is a sign of discontentment. Comparison sucks. It's the enemy of joy. And comparison for you might be material or financial. Like, man, I wish they had a car like what they had. I wish they had a house like what they have. I wish they had, I could take the types of vacations that they had. Maybe comparison for you is on more of a relational level. Like, I wish I was in that group of friends or mom's on Instagram. Must be nice. She gets to stay home with her kid all day, and they look cute. They're just having a lot of parenting time. Well, that mom that stayed home with her kid all day is looking at your post and thinking, like, man, I wish I had enough money to pay for childcare, so I go to work all day. Like it's comparison. Maybe it's circumstantial, where you look at other people who are the same age. You think, man, I should be further ahead in my life than I am right now. I don't know what it is. You could fill in the blank with all types of comparison. We kind of do this thing, and I guess we have a problem with comparison. But I don't even remember where it started. I remember, though, us driving past a golf course once during working hours. We were going to a meeting or something, and we saw some people golfing during the day. And no offense, Matt. Matt's a big golfer. And we saw some people golfing, and I was like, ooh, golfing at 12 noon. And my wife was like, must be nice. And so now, every time we see somebody that has something we like, we're like, must be nice. New car, must be nice, And my kids are doing it, so we got issues. We got contentment issues at my house, My kids will do it too. Just even like my second oldest. My oldest has a recorder. And so it's been this kind of which, oh my God, I can't wait till all 4 of them have recorders. But my second has been frustrated over my oldest having a recorder and her not having one. And I heard it must be nice. It's just become part of who we are. If you've got that attitude when you see other people with great things, you've got contentment issues. The Lamberts have contentment issues. Pray for us. Must be nice. Dave Ramsey says you need to live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later. So you've got to be willing to not live and pursue the exact same life as the people around you if you're going to get ahead, especially with your finances. You got to live. I would say that's true spiritually. That you will never understand, even this week at our conference, watching incredible speakers take to the platform. Pastor Brian Houston, Hillsong Church, thinking about everything that they've accomplished and everything that they've done. But then you hear him start talking about what he's been through. That man has lived like no one else so that he could now have influence like no one else. So don't ever look at somebody else's position and think, man, I wish I was there. Because you have no idea what it costs them to get there. Are you willing to live like no one else now so you can live like no one else later? The second thing that might be, and I'm going to fly through this, that might be an indicator of a discontented heart, is where everything's a competition. You're always trying to be better than the person next to you. Maybe it's a sign of discontentment if your life is an emotional roller coaster. It's a sign of discontentment if you feel like you never have enough. Again, that's consumerism. I want to be very clear. It's not bad to have things and to consume things. That's great. Have all the things you want. Consume all the things you want. Not an issue. The problem is when you think the consumption of things will make your life better. If you think having more is going to actually improve your quality of life, it's just not true. In fact, in Luke chapter 12, verse 15, it says, beware, don't always be wishing for what you don't have. Don't always be wishing, don't always window shop. I just don't think it's good for the soul. Don't always be wishing for what you don't have. You might have a contentment issue or be full of discontent if you flow better in negative conversations. Is it easier for you to be negative or positive? To be honest, I've been checking myself on that one recently. Because I find that in certain circles, I gravitate more towards a negative conversation. And God's been checking my spirit, saying that's not right. You need to be content. It shouldn't be easier for you to be negative than to be positive. Number 6, are you trying hard to impress people? It's a sign of discontentment. Do you feel better about yourself when others' weaknesses are exposed? It's a sign of discontentment. Do you feel entitled? It's a sign of discontentment. See, entitlement doesn't do well in the wilderness. It just doesn't do. Entitlement is guaranteed to extend your stay in the place of just enough. You will get stuck in just. See, entitled people want something before they're something. Right? Now, that plays out in our finances when you want like a certain car before you're actually living and making a wage of a person that should have that certain car. And so what do? You put it on credit. When you start to rack up the credit cards and the line of credit to purchase things that make it look like you're something you're not, because you are not really a person who has the resource to purchase those things. So stop pretending that you are someone that you're not. It's not healthy. Listen, I'm preaching to the choir. I got a vehicle with some payments on it. I want to get rid of that thing as fast as I can. Because if you can't afford it, then you can't afford it. Just be okay with that. Be content with where you're at. Be okay with just enough. I mean, we didn't always have credit cards. It used to be they'd walk in a bank and they had certain hours. It was like between noon and 2 every day. It's when you had to go to the bank and you'd go in and you'd have to basically fill out a check for yourself. They're the big long withdrawal forms. You brought up the counter. If you didn't have any money in your account, you just didn't do anything else. Well, I'm just going to go home and just wait. I'm going to wait until I work and I get paid again. Now we've got credit. I mean, even in the early days of credit cards, they'd have to bring out, you'd bring your credit card and like 6 pieces of ID. They'd bring out the machine. You know, it's more of like a ka-chunk, not really it's like a ka-chunk. They'd imprint your card on like that four copy thing. You'd get the pink one. They'd call the prime minister to make sure you had available funds. And then once it was all done, you know, but credit has people bound up so tightly in debt that it's robbing them from the flexibility to pursue their destiny. Now you're buried in debt. And it's not just finances. It's easy to get entitled over a lot of different things. Entitled over positions, entitled over friendships, and entitled, man, can you just try and remove I deserve from your vocabulary? I just try not to say I deserve. I like it. Now listen, that's not the, I'm speaking at this conference this week, and I like it when they come and find me and say, hey, Pastor Jonathan, we got a little room for you up here. We're going to bring you up here. We got some sparkling water because we know it's your fave. And I like that, but I'll never tell them I deserve it. You know what? If I had walked into that building and walked right up to my seat that I'd sat in all week and worshiped, I would have been totally fine to get up on stage and preach my message. Now, so it's not that you can't like those things. We just got to remove I deserve from your vocabulary. Romans 3:23, for all have fallen short. Like we've all sinned. So what you deserve is death. So if you're going to use I deserve, let's use it in that context. God, I'm imperfect. I'm a sinner. I deserve nothing but wrath. And then he gives you grace, which you don't deserve. It's a gift. Let's just remove I deserve from our vocabulary. See, envy is always wanting what I don't have. In fact, I would suggest this, that envy, which is kind of at the root of discontent, is resenting God's goodness in other people's lives and ignoring God's goodness in your own life. Resenting his goodness in other people's lives and ignoring his goodness in your own life. So how do we combat it? What do we do with discontent? How do we get the gains? Well, Philippians 4, verse 10. This is the Apostle Paul. I should note that while he's writing this, he is in prison, chained to a Roman guard, awaiting a verdict that could potentially mean his death. Okay, so just put yourself there if you can. Philippians chapter 4, verse 10. I rejoiced greatly. Man, I'm so happy tied up to this guard. In the Lord, that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, he's writing this to the Philippians. You were concerned, but you just had no opportunity to show it. I get it. Man, as if that's not the speak of a guy who doesn't feel like he deserves anything. Planted the church. Started the church in Philippi. He's been a key leader in that city. Now he's in prison. He hasn't heard from them. So he's just writing them a little letter from prison saying, guys, it's okay. I haven't heard from you. That's fine. No problem. Not entitled. It's like, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Now, he learned contentment. Here's the beautiful thing. If you're in a place of discontent today, you can learn contentment. You can just learn how to do it. You don't need a special gift. It doesn't take a special talent. You don't have to be really great with numbers. You can learn contentment. Contentment is not the fulfillment of what you want, but the realization of what you already have. Paul starts, man, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that you guys renewed your concern for me. I'm so thankful that you remembered me. Guys, it's so nice. He starts with gratitude. Listen, gratitude is the antidote to entitlement, to consumerism, to comparison, to contentment. Gratitude is the antidote. Here's a couple of things that gratitude will do for you. Psalms 100 verse 4 says, I will enter his gates with thanksgiving. Gratitude is the key to experiencing God's presence. You want his presence? Be thankful. Gratitude is the key to God's blessing. Jesus, in the Gospels, when he was about to feed the 5,000, he gets handed a few loaves of bread and a couple of fish from a young boy. There's no way that's going to feed the crowd that's in front of him. But what does he do first? He thanks God for it. He gives thanks. You know what? It's only after he gave thanks that what was not enough became more than enough. Some of you need to give thanks for the not enough you have sitting in front of you right now and just start continually thanking God for not enough. And just watch if he doesn't start multiplying it into more than enough. Gratitude is the key to God's victory. 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 21. It says, after consulting the people, the king appointed singers to walk ahead of the army, singing to the Lord and praising him for his holy splendor. Give thanks to the Lord. His faithful love endures forever. Even before going into battle, they gave thanks to the Lord. And on the other end was victory. Why? Because they started with gratitude. What if we did a gratitude check of our own lives? Like, we could all do this. Like, what if you just, and this might sound silly, what if you just walked around your house and started to be thankful for stuff? Table! I don't have to eat on the floor. This is awesome. I can have friends over. We can sit around this table. I got chairs too. This is amazing. I've got a table. You know, whoa. I was doing this at my house last night, so this is real time for me, okay? I got couches. You know, they don't smell great because probably 1,500 people from this church have sat on them in the last few years. But I got couches, man. And I can sit on my couch. And then all I really have to do while I'm on my couch is look at my big flat screen. And I can watch sports happening right now at any part of the world. And if for some reason my TV gets hijacked by Paw Patrol, I can pull out my little HD pocket TV. And I can stream the sports on my pocket TV. Do you know what I would have given for one of these on family road trips 30 years ago? Think about it. Anybody ever have experience with an old rotary phone? It's got a short cord. You're like, if you had a friend with zero, you got to go all the way down here. Anybody that had a 0 in their phone number didn't have many friends because it's too much work to call you, you know? But now we look at our phones and it's like, oh, the call hasn't gone through yet. It's like, just give it a minute. It's going to space first. You know, I send my wife a text message from the basement. That actually goes to space and then to her. It just doesn't seem efficient. But how cool is that? Like, how much do we have to be thankful for? When was the last time you thanked God for your spouse? God, thank you that she's still here. How did that happen? When was the last time you thanked him for your kids and the fact that he's entrusted you with raising these little people and they're full of potential and full of promise and they're full of calling? When was the last time you thanked him for your church? Man, we were away at that conference and it was awesome. I was so happy to get back here. I love my church. I love being here. I love our community. I love that we get to do life together. I love that we get to take our city together. Come on, what would happen if the Israelites woke up and thanked God for the flying bread? How different would it have been? In fact, in Numbers, it said that it was delicate paste. It was delicate bread. It was like a delicacy. Whoa! It's raining chocolate-filled croissants again. Imagine that. Imagine like catching those raindrops, just Boston creams. That's a dream come true, man. Imagine if they woke up and were thankful. God, it rained bread from heaven again. This is crazy. Went back to their tents. Hey, Ichabod, it rained bread from heaven. Get up, Jeremiah. Get up the other kid. We got to get some, like, imagine. Imagine if they were just grateful and thankful. See, the problem with the Israelites is they allowed the miracle to become mundane. They got bored with the provision of God. They got too used to the miracle of God. They weren't impressed by the bread anymore. Like, what? It's bread from heaven. How does the impact of that wear off? See, but what happens is when you start to take something for granted, you can't possibly have gratitude for it at the same time. So, that's just like if you've been taking your spouse for granted, you just need to start thanking God for your spouse. You won't take them for granted anymore. But you can't do both. And so this bread that's falling from heaven, they literally started to feel like it was just, we deserve it. We deserve it. We actually deserve more than the bread that's falling from heaven. Now listen, this bread that's falling from heaven is an Old Testament picture of the New Testament reality of who Jesus is. In fact, Jesus says this of himself in John 6:35. Jesus declared, "I'm the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." Listen, can I just encourage you this morning? If you want to move on from the place of just enough into the land of more than enough, then do not take Jesus for granted. Don't take the miracle of salvation for granted. Listen, Jesus is not common. He is not ordinary. He is not one of many options. It's not maybe Jesus. It's only Jesus. Do not take him for granted. Because see, if we were truly appreciative and we truly understood and truly received how incredible grace is and how incredible the cross was and how incredible his involvement and interaction in our life is, then we would never take him for granted and we'd always be thankful. That's why Paul can say from prison, I know what it is to be in need and I know what it is to have plenty. Listen, I've been on both ends. I've been rich and I've been poor. And I've learned that the secret of being content in every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, is that I can do all this through him who gives me strength. I can do all this. You can make it through a season of just enough because of him who gives you strength. You can make it out of never having enough and always feeling like you need more and wanting to be justified by your possessions in comparison and consume. You can make it through that just because of Jesus. Sometimes we take this verse out of context. We say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. We say it after great victories. Ha-ha! I can do all things, all great and powerful things through Christ who strengthens me. What about just surviving? Are you willing to survive on Jesus and only Jesus? Oh, because that's real contentment. See, until Jesus is all you have, you might never know that Jesus is all you need. So I'm just trying to help you. I'm trying to help you from having to be in that place because trust me, you'll end up there someday. But can we just save ourselves the pain of wandering for 40 years when there's a promise 11 days away? That if we would just understand, Jesus, you're all I need. Jesus, I don't need recognition. I don't need fame. I don't need possessions. I don't need more. God, I don't need more clothes. I don't need a bigger house. I don't need a bigger car. God, I don't need a raise. I don't need a promotion. God, God, I just need you. And if you could be okay with just Jesus, man, that is the secret to more than enough. Because if you're not okay with just Jesus when you have just enough, then when you've got more options to put your hope and trust in, you're not going to be okay with just Jesus. He needs to know that it's only him, and that's okay right now. And that's okay right now. Church, we are going to be the most content church you know what? We meet in a middle school, both locations. Would it be great to have a sweet building? Sure, there'd be upsides. But man, I'm so thankful we get to meet where we do. Man, I'm thankful for Mountain Park School. We've never been kicked out one Sunday. We even set off the fire alarms a few times, and they let us back in, you know? Man, traffic is crazy, but you're here. You found a spot somewhere. You might have parked on 130th, but you're here. You know, Northwest, man, thank God for Arbor Lake School. Man, let's be so content with where we are, but that's the key, is that contentment's not complacency, so we're going to keep pushing. We have a vision. We have a dream, so we're going to always thank God for where we are, but we're going to push for the promise, for the more than enough, for the place he's taken us. Come on, would you bow your heads? We're going to pray together. I think there might be a few people in the room this morning, and you actually just need somebody to pray with you over this whole idea of contentment. You have not been content. You need somebody else just to pray for you that Jesus would be enough. And that's our prayer teams are going to come on either side. It's going to be great. But I also think there's some people in the room today, both campuses, both locations, and you've been struggling because you're looking at every other possible thing you can get your hands on to find peace in your heart and peace in your life. And I think you came today so that I could tell you that it's just Jesus. That's actually all that you need. It's just Jesus. That's it. It's just Jesus. That's what you're looking for. You thought it was a few other things. Maybe you thought it was a relationship. I don't know. Whatever it was, you need to know today that it's only Jesus. He is the all-sufficient one. He's the one that really satisfies. So with everybody's eyes closed and everybody's heads bowed, if you're here today, both locations, and you've never decided that just Jesus was enough for you, I want to give you that opportunity. So when I count to 3, on 3, if you want to just say that, you want to take that step, say, Jesus, it's only you I need. I need to make that decision today. When I hit 3, I want you to lift your hand, and we're going to pray together. It's just Jesus. You need to give your life to Jesus right now in this moment. You've been living for other things, but it's just him. Here we go. 1, 2. Come on, take this moment. 3. Go ahead. Nobody's looking. You slip your hand up. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you in the Northwest. The Southeast, if you've got your hand up, you can put your hands down. That's all right. Northwest, you go ahead and make sure your hand was up. Once it's up, you put it down. I'm going to ask you to do something. Maybe if you made that decision by raising your hand today, maybe you made it in your heart. Would you just repeat this simple prayer after me? You see, why don't we all pray it together? Say, Jesus, you're enough. You're all I want, and you're all that I need. Come into my life today. Amen. Amen. Come on, let's give it up for everyone that made that decision today. Hey, come on, Northwest, give it up. Come on, church. It's so good. We're so proud of you guys.
Amazing.